So you have your handout there, and we're talking about attaining your ideal body weight. And I thought, since I was lecturing on this tonight, that I should weigh myself and see how far off I was. So I did, and I weighed 183 pounds, 183.8. So I'm 3.8 pounds above my high school weight. I wish that my weight was where it was when I was in high school. Have you noticed that something happens? Gravity sort of
You kidding?
pulls it down. You know, it used to be up here. Those days I can remember still, but they're not the same. So things happen to us as time goes by, but it's still good to maintain your ideal body weight. But that's a little bit variable because that doesn't take into account body composition, does it? Arnold Schwarzenegger at his prime was very overweight by this calculation, but he had his weight in good places and he was very healthy, even though he was, quote, overweight. His weight was muscle mass. And so ideal body weight doesn't take into account body composition. That's a whole nother thing that we can work on, but just for a rule of thumb, roughly your ideal body weight for women is 100 pounds if you're 5 feet, and then 5 pounds for every inch above 5 feet. So most of us aren't overweight, we're just not tall enough. Yeah. So for men, it's 110 pounds for 5 feet, as our muscle mass is a little bit higher. And yes, per volume, muscle does weigh more than fat. But a pound of fat weighs the same as a pound of muscle, right? Just making sure you agree with me. But per volume, it's a little different. So 110 pounds for 5 feet for men and 5 pounds for every inch over that. So I'm at about my ideal body weight, but that doesn't mean I'm at my ideal body composition, because that has to do with muscle and fat mass. One way to look at your health is your ability to resist gravity. You know, gravity will win. It sort of lets us go when we're about 6 feet down, right? But the better you can resist gravity, the healthier you are. That's just generally true. If you can jump and run quickly, resisting gravity, you can do pretty well. We have a test in medicine for those of us that are older. It's called Get Up and Go. And you actually measure how long it takes for someone to get up out of the chair, walk across the room, walk back, and sit down. That's a Get Up and Go test. Oh, what am I measuring? I'm really measuring how well they can resist gravity. And so when we're measuring your ideal body weight, what we really want to know is, what can you do with that body? How well can you resist gravity? And you understand immediately that if you're overweight and it's fat mass, gravity can pull on you pretty hard and you don't have enough muscle maybe to resist that pull of gravity, and so your Get Up and Go test will be slower, right? And I have patients that can't get out of the chair without using their arms. Anyone seen someone like that? If they sit down, there's no way they're getting up unless you've seen them, and they can't resist gravity very well, and they're at high risk for falling, and they're not very healthy. So you need to factor all of these things in when you're thinking about weight and whether you're healthy or not. So if we are overweight, what we're really interested in is not weight loss, but fat loss, right? Because if you lose muscle mass, you're not healthier, you can't resist gravity as well, and you're at higher risk for all of the diseases. because, of course, being overweight with higher fat mass puts you at higher risk for diabetes and hypertension and coronary artery disease and cancer and arthritis, etc. There's a study recently looked at osteoarthritis of the knees, and usually when you have very bad arthritis, we do what? Replace them, right? But if you attained your ideal body weight, your outcome in osteoarthritis of the knee is just about as good as if you have knee replacements. Oh, that's interesting. Why don't we just have people lose weight instead of doing knee replacements? It wouldn't be very cost effective if you're an orthopedist, but it is helpful to know that so that you have an alternative if you'd rather lose weight than have a knee replacement. Now, you can have bad arthritis in the knees at a normal body weight if you've traumatized your knees, and that's when you definitely need surgery. But if it's primary osteoarthritis, weight loss alone often takes care of it. Just something to think about. So there are weight loss programs that help you lose weight, but you lose muscle mass as well as fat mass, and we would like to avoid those if we can, right? Because I don't really care what I weigh, what I care is how healthy I am. And so I want to avoid weight loss programs where I lose muscle mass the same as fat mass, because then I'll be lighter but no healthier. Make sense to you? Yeah. And unfortunately, that's what some diet methods do, and I have them there. Prolonged fasting. I don't recommend prolonged fasting. Intermittent fasting can work, and if you have questions about that afterwards, we can address those. But prolonged fasting, you lose a lot of muscle mass as well as fat mass, and you end up pretty weak. So I don't think that's an ideal method. Another one that does that, and you lose quite a bit of muscle mass, is a keto diet. I don't recommend keto diets, although they are effective. And the nice thing about keto diets is you can buy a smaller casket sooner. Yeah, because your risk of coronary disease goes up and your risk of cancer goes up while your weight is going down. But you don't get healthier with them because you lose muscle mass as well as fat mass. So I don't recommend those. The other thing which is getting lots of press these days is weight loss with GLP-1 drugs. You know what those are, right? Ozempic, Mounjaro, Trulicity, etc. They are very effective at controlling diabetes, and I do use them in people that won't come to my lectures. But it's important to remember that GLP-1 drugs decrease fat mass and muscle mass. How many of you have heard of Ozempic face? Yeah. So an Ozempic face, what's happening is you lose fat mass, but you also lose muscle mass in your face, and you get a face that's not too expressive. There's some other interesting things about the GLP-1 drugs. Recently, there's been more information on sudden blindness from them. Fortunately, it's not too common, but statistics don't apply to individuals, and if you get it, it's not much comfort that not many other people got it, right? Yeah, so medications are very helpful, but if you can do the same with a healthy diet, you're far better off. So let's think about the best weight loss program. It would help us lose fat, right? And maintain muscle. And then we'd be healthier when we lost weight instead of just lighter and still sick. And we wouldn't want that. And the other thing is, for a weight loss program to be sustainable, it cannot result in increased hunger because it's not sustainable if you do that. I don't know anyone, I haven't met anyone that's emotionally stable who can deal with long-term hunger and just say, hey, I'm fine, I'm hungry, but I'm fine. Anybody here really like to be hungry? I do if I'm about to sit down to a nice meal. But other than that, don't ask me to be hungry in order to lose weight because it's not going to be sustainable. We can't do that unless we're into self-flagellation and, but that's not, that's a whole nother topic. So we need to be able to lose weight, and the only way to lose weight is to cut calories. That's true, right? You have to cut calories, but you have to cut them in such a way that you're not hungry. And so if people are overweight, one of the first things I tell them is you're not eating enough, because that's really true. If they were eating enough of the right foods, they wouldn't be so hungry and they could lose weight. And so what we need to do is increase the volume of the food, but decrease the caloric density of the food. And that's why when Cheryl was making the tacos, she cut out oil. What's the caloric density of oil? How many calories per pound? Any guesses? 4,000. How many calories per pound of vegetables on average? That's right, 100. So you could eat 40 pounds of vegetables or 1 pound of butter. Well, I think I'd take the 40 pounds of vegetables. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? So that's really the key if you want successful, sustainable weight loss. And it makes perfect sense that the people that are the thinnest in the world, on average, as a group, are people that eat a whole food plant-based diet. It's really hard to be overweight if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet. You have to stuff yourself to do it. It's really difficult. It is not difficult to be overweight on a vegan diet. You can be a vegan and eat trash. You really can. Potato chips, no problem, vegan. Dunkin' Donuts, no problem, vegan. Load on the oil, load on the sugar, it's all vegan. And you can be, as my dad used to say, a 2-ton Lizzie. Yeah, no problem. There's no magic to a vegan diet for weight loss. What you need is a whole food plant-based diet. Turn the page over there, or you'll have a little note about caloric density. The stomach on average holds about a quart, 4 cups. And so if you want to feel full, you need to eat about a quart of food a meal. Well, that's not that much. For me, I mean, I like to eat, and I like a full feeling. How many of you like to get up from the table when you feel not overstuffed, but full? I do. I mean, it's part of us. But if we don't eat right, and sometimes I don't eat at home, and I'll go out to eat at somebody else's home, and I'll eat the usual volume, but it's higher density calories, and you just feel like a slug afterwards. You just, ugh. If you're used to eating, food that's low caloric density and filling up on it, and then you go eat a high-fat meal, you just feel terrible afterwards. So here's some examples. 1 cup of strawberry ice cream, that has the same calories as 5 cups of strawberries. Well, you'd be way over full if you ate 5 cups of strawberries in one setting, because that's over a quart. But I could eat a cup of ice cream and have after a full meal, couldn't you? Yeah, because we all have a separate stomach for dessert. Have you noticed that? Yeah. Another one, you could have a soda, which you could drink really fast. That has the same amount of calories as 3 cups of carrots. Anyone going to sit down and eat 3 cups of carrots? Especially if they're not cooked, if you have to chew them. I mean, it'd take you an awful long time, and you'd be full of carrots, and yeah. Or you could have an 8-ounce serving of steak or 3 cups of boiled beans. They're both about 600 calories. Well, yeah. So you get the idea. Or you could have 1 tablespoon of olive oil or 25 olives. Of course, those olives would have to be salt cured with water, not with oil. But 25 olives is quite a few. When's the last time you ate 25 olives in one setting? But you could put a tablespoon of olive oil on your salad and you'd hardly even notice it. And so you get the picture here that if we're going to lose weight in a healthy way, we want low caloric density, high volume. And that's really important. So some recommendations here. For a weight loss program, number 1, to be effective long term, you must maintain satiety by increasing volume consumed while reducing calories. Most foods consumed should be less than 300 calories per pound. Well, that's fruits and vegetables. Grains are 1,000 calories per pound, and I'll tell you how to eat them, and you still won't gain weight in just a minute. But fruits and vegetables, by and large, you cannot get too fat when you're eating those if you keep the oil off of them and don't put a lot of sugar. How much maple syrup did she use? Not much. Just a little bit for flavoring. You'll find that if you match the sugar or the sweetener with the salt, it's about right, and it really brings out the flavor. And I'll often do that. If I'm making a salad dressing, I'll put in the same amount of honey as I do salt. And that really brings out the flavor, but the calorie addition is minimal. And, but I don't do that with oil because sugar has less than half the calories that oil does. If I'm trying to lose weight, we do it that way. So there's the key, really, low caloric density. You know, if you go to Weight Watchers, they don't even count most vegetables, right? Those are free. And the reason is because many of them, particularly like celery and some of them, take more energy to chew than there are in them. So the more of them you eat, the more weight you're going to lose. You know, as long as the celery doesn't have peanut butter and cream cheese on it, then we get into trouble. All right, number 2, sugar and oil should be minimized, as sugar has 1,775 calories per pound and oil is 4,000 calories per pound. And sugar and refined carbs also increase insulin secretion. Why is that an enemy if you want to lose weight? Because insulin makes you hungry. In fact, in people that were having trouble maintaining their weight in years gone by, we used to inject them with insulin to give them more hunger so they'd eat more. Well, you don't want that if you're trying to lose weight. So you want to avoid refined carbs and sugar just to keep the insulin level down. The same is true of foods rich in branched-chain amino acids. Branched-chain amino acids particularly stimulate insulin production. You might not be aware of it, but not only do carbohydrates stimulate insulin production, so do proteins. And the branched-chain amino acids are particularly good at increasing insulin secretion. And if you increase insulin secretion, you'll be more hungry. And if you're more hungry, you're going to eat more, right? Yes, question.
Some examples of the branched chain.
Leucine, valine, and isoleucine. Is that the answer you wanted? No, the answer you wanted was the foods that are rich in those are animal protein, fish, meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy. All of those are rich in animal in the branched chain amino acids. And I have that there under number 3. Those are the ones that are rich in the branched chain. Do you not have a handout? Okay. All right. You can't read it in the dark. Turn on the lights for it. All right. Number 4, food should be rich in fiber. The recommended daily allowance for women is 25 grams of fiber, and the average American gets about 10. The recommended allowance for men is 38. That has come up. It didn't used to be 38. It used to be around 20. But we're realizing that fiber is really important for health as well as for weight loss. Fiber provides satiety. You know that. If you eat an apple, you're going to be a lot more full than if you eat the juice from one apple. How many apples does it take to make a cup of apple juice? About 3. And I can drink a cup of apple juice and I didn't even know I took it down. But if I have to eat 3 apples, I'm going to feel some satiety, right? Interestingly, apples are, and salads too, have so much water in them that if you eat a salad or an apple at the beginning of a meal, you'll actually eat less calories because that fills you up and so does the water. So you want to have a fiber increased. And I would say if you want to lose weight, at least 35 to 40 grams of fiber a day. Great. What's the difference between soluble fiber and insoluble fiber? It doesn't make any difference for weight loss. They're equally good. Soluble fiber is a little bit better at binding cholesterol in the gut, and then you excrete it in the stool. That's another benefit from fiber. The first medication that was used to lower cholesterol was nothing other than a resin binder. It works similar to fiber, and it was shown to reduce heart disease and reduce your cholesterol beautifully, but no one wanted to have that resin and the GI side effects, so we came up with statins, which are equally effective, or actually more so, at lowering cholesterol. And the nice thing about statins is it'll increase your risk for diabetes. And so maybe you should change your diet instead and lower both risks. The best we can do, this is a little added, but the best we can do to reduce your risk of coronary disease with maximum medication is about a 40% risk reduction. That doesn't sound like much, but it really is big. The best you can do with diet, according to data from Dean Ornish and Esselstyn, is a 90% reduction in your risk of coronary disease. So why don't we bottle diet and put it in a pill? Well, it's a little difficult, but it works better than statins do. So fiber should be increased. The other reason it should be increased is your gut bacteria have a lot to do with telling you whether you've had enough to eat or not. You thought it was you, and all the time it was the gut bacteria that make a chemical that they send up to the brain to say, Ralph, you've had enough to eat. And you say, okay, gut bacteria, I'll listen. Why do they say that? When they get enough fiber, they make the chemical neurotransmitter that goes up to the brain and turns off the switch that says, well, you've had enough to eat now. So a high enough fiber diet really helps your microbiome to be happy, and you want a happy microbiome. The other thing that happens on a high fiber diet is those bacteria make another substance called butyrate, which downregulates inflammation. And people with rheumatoid arthritis or any of the other chronic diseases notice reductions in inflammation on a high fiber diet from butyrate production by those lovely gut bacteria. In fact, all chronic disease is accentuated by inflammation and made better if inflammation goes down, and just upping your fiber intake, you'll reduce inflammation, as well as lose weight, which is good. So the foods highest in fiber are seeds, and that's beans, and grains are seeds, right? Wheat, that's a seed, and oats, those are seeds. So whole grains and seeds like sesame seeds, your tahini, and chia seeds and pumpkin seeds and flax seeds, those are all seeds. We call them seeds. And they're the highest in fiber. And they can be part of a weight loss diet, particularly if the cell wall is not disturbed. Why is that? If you take wheat and cook it whole and then eat it, you'll digest it, but you'll digest it slowly because the body has to break down the cell wall, it has to break down that fiber covering, and it takes a long time and you get a lot of satiety. If you grind that flour, and I'm not saying don't eat bread, but I'm just giving you, for instance, if you grind that flour, grind those oats or flake them, you break down the cellular structure, you absorb the calories much more rapidly. And so that's why you're better off to eat whole grains cooked, like buckwheat, rice, oats. Anybody eating whole oat groats? Yeah, they're great. It just takes longer to cook, but you can put them in the crock pot overnight and cook them and you'll have a really good cereal. You made something with oat groats recently that was really tasty. What was the dish? Do you remember? I don't remember either, but I really enjoyed it with whole oat groats, and you can buy those, not the steel cut, but the oat groats. Question?
For flaxseed, should that be ground?
Great question. Flaxseed should be ground if you want to get the omega-3 fatty acids out of it. If you're trying to lose weight, you can eat it just like it is, and a lot of it will go right through you, and it'll go into your waist instead of onto your waist. You got to spell those different though, right? But seeds are very good for us, but if you eat them whole, you will see some in the waist. You'll get some of the nutrition out of them. That brings up another point that I'll mention that's in the recommendations later, but if you eat peanuts whole, I mean you just chew them up and swallow them, you absorb about 30% less calories than if you eat peanut butter. Why? Because you're not chewing them as thoroughly as that machine grinds them. That's important to remember. If you're starving, please eat your peanuts ground. But if you're overweight, grind them yourself. And you'll absorb less. Where does it go? Well, it goes some of it into the stool, but the gut bacteria digest the rest, and they're very happy. And then when they get fed, they say, you've had enough. And so if you're going to have nuts, which are very high calorie, you'll want to have them whenever you can, if you're trying to lose weight, in their natural form. That's not to say you shouldn't have tahini occasionally, and tahini is way better than oil. Be careful when you buy tahini. Much of it has some sesame seeds ground and a lot of oil added. You can buy tahini that's just sesame seeds, and that's lots better for you and lower calorie. Any other questions? Yes?
So you should eat raw nuts rather than roasted nuts.
Great question. The answer is yes, but for a different reason. Raw or roasted, I don't really care as far as calories. It's ground versus you grinding them. But those of you who've listened to me talk about glycation know that if you heat a food to high temperature, it causes glycation, which is attachment of sugar to fat or carbohydrate, and the highly glycated foods cause more inflammation in our body. You can glycate proteins or fats or DNA in your body when your sugar's higher than it should be, or you can glycate the proteins and fats before you eat the food by cooking it at high temperature. And if you want more on that, look up Jamie Urabari's article in Journal of American Dietetic Association, June 2008. He has a list of 500 different foods and their advanced glycated end products per 100 grams. Just for a few examples, a potato has about 17 kilounits of aged products if it's boiled. If you French fry it, it goes to 1,544. Chicken boiled with lemon to prevent glycation, it's about 900. You fry it and it's about 9,000, sorry. You barbecue it and it's 18,000. So the higher the temperature, the higher the glycation. But if you eat plants which will want to resist that, it's lower generally, particularly if you don't cook them at high temperature with oil. All right, that's an aside. That was free tonight too. All right, so number 5, a whole nother topic, but really good. That is, eat greens regularly. But not just greens, green greens. What do I mean? The deeper the green, the better. Why? They're richer in thylakoids. What in the world is thylakoids? Well, it's those little packets that contain chlorophyll that when the sun hits the chlorophyll, it makes energy. But those thylakoids are really interesting. They don't break down well, and when they get down to the terminal ileum, that's the last part of the small intestine, if the body detects thylakoids, it says, oh no, we're getting nutrition that's leaving here before it's digested. And there's a thing called the ileal brake. It stops or slows down gut transit, and it makes you feel full longer. It doesn't lead to constipation, because when those thylakoids that aren't digested hit the colon, the bacteria love them, and your fiber's up, and you're still you won't get constipated, I promise. But it will give you satiety. So if you want to have that satiety from a whole different perspective, eat deep green greens and have some greens every day. You know, kale and collards and broccoli and all those deep greens. Parsley, yeah. Spinach. Those are really good for satiety from a whole different mechanism. Let's see, we got a few more if I can turn the page. 6, make sure that you're well hydrated before meals. You know, some people sit down and they really need to have a drink of water, but they think, oh, I don't want water. And so they eat their meal and they confuse thirst and hunger, and so they eat more than they should. If you'll have a glass or 2 of water before you sit down, 15 minutes before you sit down to eat, your body doesn't have the same hunger. And good studies have shown you eat less. You can do the same by eating a salad at the beginning of the meal. Why? Because salad is very rich in water, or an apple, which I mentioned earlier. So don't sit down at the table if you're thirsty. In fact, don't sit down at the table until you've had a good drink of water first if you're trying to lose weight. Good studies show that if you hydrate people well, they lose more weight. Well, that's easy. Just make sure you're getting adequate water. Number 7, eat plant foods minimally processed. I've already touched on this. Intact cell walls of plants take more time to digest. And so they release their calories for absorption at a slower rate, and they provide more satiety. So that's why I don't recommend green smoothies. I don't grind that stuff up, chew it up, and you'll have more satiety. You and I both know that it's easier to drink one of those green smoothies and eat a ton of food than it is to chew all that up. And if you do the work of the blender, you're burning calories. I mean, that blender takes energy, right? Yeah, so I recommend green smoothie for people without teeth. Otherwise, chew. Yeah. All right. Just a few more, and then we're done. Number 8, use some spices. Particularly these have been shown to accelerate weight loss. Cumin and black cumin. They're good seasonings. They taste good in beans. You notice she put some in. She put some garlic in too. Garlic has been shown to increase weight loss. Ginger as well. So use those every day. In fact, the studies that were done, they put that in capsules and had people just take it so they could do a placebo with it. I wouldn't recommend that because you're missing that good flavor. But it was a 1/4 teaspoon a day of those. Each of those showed accelerated weight loss. So use those in your food. Question?
Does it matter between whether it's like dry powder, like the form of dried powder, or fresh?
No, both will work. They used dried powder in the study so they could use a placebo. But fresh, it'll have a better flavor. Yeah, question?
What about turmeric?
Turmeric's fine, but I don't know of any studies that show that it helps with weight loss, but I recommend you eat turmeric because it will definitely reduce inflammation. Any of the colorful vegetables, fruits, plants reduce inflammation because antioxidants, the most potent antioxidants, are colorful. And so if you want to reduce inflammation, you want to eat the rainbow. Thank you very much. I needed some water so I won't overeat now. Thank you, Cheryl. All right. Number 9. A calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. If you eat a calorie at breakfast versus a calorie at supper, you'll gain less weight if you eat a big breakfast. If you're trying to lose weight, never skip breakfast, unless your house is on fire or something like that. But eat breakfast like a king or like a queen, eat lunch like a prince or a princess, and supper, if you eat it, like a pauper. Eat most of your calories by midday. If they've done studies where they've given people the exact same food, the exact same amounts, breakfast and lunch, they lose. Same stuff, lunch and supper, they gain. A calorie is not a calorie. It depends on when you eat it. Meal timing is everything. And don't snack. Just 3 square meals, better yet, 2 if you're really interested in weight loss. If you have to have supper, all right, have a piece of fruit. And that'll help a lot. All right, and then to sum it up, eat a whole food, plant-based diet, never miss breakfast, and keep moving to maintain muscle loss. Any questions? Simple, isn't it?
What do you do about like medications that can make you gain weight?
If you're on medications that make you gain weight, eat this way anyway and it'll help. Remember, medications don't have calories.
Right.
And so what they're doing, they're either slowing your metabolic rate, which you can beat with exercise, or they're increasing your hunger. And we're going to beat that with fiber and all the tricks that I mentioned. And so some people say, well, I can't help the fact that I'm gaining weight because I'm on medication. Medication doesn't have any calories. And so it doesn't make you gain weight, it just makes it harder for you to lose because it slows metabolic rate or increases hunger. And if you do these things, it'll help you combat it. Great question, though. Any others?
Dr. Now, I'm reading this, and I've been on trying to look for different, like, I know it's not weight loss, but thyroid and diverticulitis and stuff, and we're talking about all these whole grains and everything, and no matter what I have read, it's like, sometimes it's very difficult in the larger grains or seeded.
Okay,
products.
so let's talk about diverticulosis, and then we'll take up thyroid if you want.
No, that's okay.
The key to avoiding problems with diverticulosis is not the avoidance of seeds. It's to maintain your stool pudding soft, because what causes diverticulitis is when the diverticulum, that little sac on the colon, gets a hard ball of stool stuck in the mouth.
Okay.
Okay? Now, can corn do that too? Probably. So for you, if you have bad diverticulitis, recurrent, I would recommend you grind your seeds. That's an exception, I know that, but I would recommend it. But high fiber and plenty of water, because fiber alone will give you hard stools. Fiber plus water will give you pudding soft stools. If you ever have a hard stool with diverticulosis, you're on the way to diverticulitis, and you don't want that. And remember, you got diverticulosis in the first place, not because of the parents you chose, but because of the diet your parents chose that you grew up with and stayed on, low fiber diets cause diverticulosis. If you have to strain at stool like that, you're going to get diverticulosis eventually. If you have to say, where's the bathroom? I need to go now, and you go and you sit down and it's done, you'll never get diverticulosis. And you know what they call vegetarians? Salad shooters. So, all right. Well, maybe that's enough for tonight. If you have questions later, feel free to come up. And remember, I don't really want you to all be skinny. I want you to be able to resist gravity, right? So you can get up and go. Thank you very much.